is the guiding principle here for you that's come out of the life that you have lived, freedom?
That would be a rather grandiose thing for me to say for myself, but I'd rather say, and I do say, lay claim to it in the book, to be consistently anti-totalitarian. So in fact...
What's the difference?
Well, narrow but deep. It's to say that, in fact, the utopian idea that humans can be hammered into another compulsory shape isn't a utopian idea. It's a fantasy. It can't actually be brought about, but a terrible amount of damage and misery can be the result of the attempt. And the temptation has to be resisted in small ways as well as in large ones. And that the possibility of coexistence between open societies and totalitarian ones doesn't really exist. There will be a fight. And I would rather it was picked on our terms than theirs.
What do you think of President Obama?
Well, I think about him quite a lot. He makes one think, unlike some presidents. And one of the things he makes me think is, I wonder how he thinks. I'd give a lot to know. He appears to be quite cerebral, and he appears to set quite a lot of store by that feeling that he's not really fueled by the emotions, that he solves his problems with his mind, that he's an intellectual. And I like that, and I like the evidence.
You like that in a leader?
Yes, but it can be a big disadvantage in that he sometimes gives me the impression that he thinks that a lot of important disagreements arise out of misunderstanding, cultural misunderstanding, say. Yeah. In fact, since we're talking about it, Iran is one of the occasions where I worry about that. It's as if he feels that our rather ragged and jagged history since the American interventions in Iran of the 50s and so forth, the fact that we have different religions, that we have different culture, these explain the difference between us on things like the nuclear weapons or the export of violence.
And what do you think explains the difference between us?
A theocratic dictatorship in Iran that
core beliefs
that wants to tyrannize and own the Iranian people, in fact, that does claim in its ideology that it is the owner, it is the parent of all the Iranian people. In other words, a totalitarian system, which is fueled by this ambition, which is also in its constitution, to spread that idea and push outwards by the export of violence. In other words, a regime with which a confrontation is inevitable. It's not to do with the fact that we don't fully understand the emotions of Shia Islam.
Have you ever had a conversation with him?
With the president?
Yes.
No. No, I know I've met some of his people, his associates. I think I know the sort of politics that he exemplifies. I've read a lot of his stuff. I admire him as a writer, I have to say. I like his humor. I like the way that he's rather self-deprecating. He understands he's been lucky.
So on balance, your assessment of him, other than the fact that you like a thinking president, is what?
That he's a possibly very weak guy indeed.
Really?
Yeah.
Weak guy indeed.
Yes, because I think if you wanted to maximize the likelihood of a bad outcome, I would say to double or ostensibly to double the number of troops in Afghanistan while announcing the date by which they'll start to withdraw probably would be the quickest way of ensuring that the Afghan population already begins to make other arrangements for itself, which don't include your continued presence in the country.
Has time made you more or less admiring of Bill Clinton?
Certainly not more. I'm not sure it could have been any less.
Really?
Yes.
You had that much...
It's visceral, if you like.
It is.
Yes,
what is the visceral?
Just I've interviewed some of the women whose stories never quite made it, who claimed that he'd forced himself on them. I think they're telling the truth. I thought that his...
That's unimaginable to you, isn't it?
Yes.
I know, because...
Yes, or that I'd have a friend who would.
Yeah, exactly.
Male
I mean, it's unimaginable because the idea that you have been so lucky or fortunate or successful.
Well, now, I'm not sure I saw that coming.
I've been looking for an opportunity to express it.
I think,
and I had a better way, but go ahead.
I think even the most modestly equipped of men should get used to the idea that if they're going to enjoy female company, it better be on their own merit.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so what's the visceral attitude about Clinton.
I thought that George Stephanopoulos was essentially right when he realized that the man was sociopathic. That other people don't have a real existence at Clinton. I mean, he only cares about himself.
Yeah.
I thought that was so obvious and so reptilian and so damaging to politics.
That seems to be, in the end, history is what fascinates you the most.
Mm.
The making of history.
Yes, and having a sense of what goes into making that. Yeah, absolutely.
And what you have said before is the idea that you influence history is the most intoxicating of things.
Yeah, it's the great temptation. People think about their legacies. People say this is a historic moment. They forget, that as Hegel says, it's only when the owl of Minerva has taken wing that you can make any judgment about history. It's only when the epoch is over that you can make any judgments. If you say you are changing history, you're probably not. You may possibly be changing your own.
So when you think about legacy yourself, at moments of reflection, here, illness, where does it lead you?
I refuse to do it. I've decided I'm going to forego that.
Forego that in your own mind, or forego that in conversation?
I think it's...
In both?
Yes, in both. I'm not going to think about myself. I think it's too Napoleonic, it's too grandiose.
I mean, that's another strain that runs in it.
You've
said things here in conversation with me throughout this conversation. There's a certain sense of modesty.
Well, I've got a lot to be modest about. I say in my book I'm very proud of having done a couple of things. One of them is sticking by the Iraqi and Kurdish opposition to Saddam Hussein during some very bad years when they were being massacred. And they needed their friends, and I hear from them now, and they consider me to be one still. I'm proud of that. I'm not going to overdo the modesty, believe me. I'm also very proud, I have a chapter on this too, having been a friend of Salman Rushdie's during the time of the fatwa, when he was on the run, when not only did a friend need his friends, but when a very important principle, the whole principle of free expression, needed to be defended against the most direct, thuggish possible challenge. I mean, a death threat backed by death squads from the theocratic leader of a foreign state. And when a lot of people didn't show too much stomach for that battle. That was a very educational time in my life. They
were weak of spine.
Yes. Or worse, they thought that it was Rushdie's fault for writing the novel, not the Ayatollah Khomeini's for issuing a death threat backed by money and a death squad. In other words, complete cultural massacre.
But this comes back. There are central themes here, when that is about your admiration of standing up for principle, your admiration for courage, and your admiration for friendship. And
see, when you say these things, Charlie, you force me to sit here as if I'm taking them as no more than my due, and you have to see that's embarrassing for me.
Fair enough. I don't care if I embarrass you.
Oh, fair enough.
I really don't.
Okay.
I'm interested in who you are.
Well, on that understanding, I don't mind being embarrassed.
Okay, great. All right. Who do you admire politically?
I really think that people who look for heroism and so on among politicians are probably looking for love in all the wrong places to begin with. And it's a thing to avoid. But at the risk of embarrassment, I would say that, very aware of a lot of his flaws, I'm quite a strong admirer of Tony Blair's. I think he was a man really prepared to take risks for points of principle. I think he did 2 or 3 very important things on that basis. One was to save Sierra Leone from the Liberian invasion, the hand loppers and blood diamond merchants who were invading Sierra Leone. Decided there was going to be another Rwanda. No one was doing anything about it. The UN was doing nothing about it. The Sierra Leoneans appealed to Britain. Blair said, all right, we'll send the boys. And we smashed the RUF, this gang, and drove them back into Liberia and got rid of Charles Taylor into the parliament. Very good. Pressed Clinton to hang tough over Kosovo. Made an early speech saying that the next confrontation would have to be with Saddam Hussein. That was in 1999. Repeatedly said, we can't coexist with totalitarian ideologies or regimes. And lost his career and his reputation on it, largely.
It was principle.
He could have retired after 10 years, the first time a Labour Prime Minister had ever served for a decade, as a really popular, really successful politician. And he retired absolutely covered in spittle and pursued to this day with the most unbelievable defamation and calumny and slander that will haunt him beyond the grave.
Here's something I admire deeply about you two, is the notion of friendship. You form bonds with Martin Amis, Julian Barnes, Ian McEwan, and others.
I've been very lucky with my contemporaries, I think. They taught me how to write.
They taught you how to write?
Well, more important perhaps, how not to write. I was a rather didactic, rather polemical writer when I first got to know them. I was writing for the cause, rather. I wasn't paying very much attention to style. They pointed out to me, it can be enjoyable to read and write things, as well as a duty to do so. Introduced me to writers I hadn't appreciated enough, like Nabokov, for example. Broadened my outlook, deepened my feeling for language, as well as providing me with a wonderful context of, yes, amusing friendship.
Yeah, great.
I forget who says it.
Repartee and dinner and in common experience.
Yes, and one or two common struggles, as in the one to defend Salman, which it absorbed a lot of our energy for quite a few years. Here was a case of not just a good friend needing his friends, but a very important principle needing to be defended. And because my family background was rather small and didn't last very long, was rather constricted, when I read, I think it's a man called Hesketh Pearson who first said it, the definition of friendship is it's God's apology for relations. God's apology for family. I thought, yeah, I know what he means by that. This is family to me.
It is family.
Yeah.
Now, are you all equally close, or are you closer to Martin than others, or is it just?
Well, we're all English originally, so
yeah.
It's considered extremely embarrassing to talk about.
All right.
Intimacy in that kind. One doesn't. The whole thing is, if you have to say it, then probably there's something terribly wrong.
Here you write your memoir, and you do not fail to put in several sexual experiences with men. None of the above.
It's almost a cliche, and many Americans think it's more than that.
Yeah.
That's a formative thing with young Englishmen who go to.
They do, exactly. I've been told
I think most of them think we never completely get over it. It can be got over, I can assure you, but it is. It can also be very powerful at the time, emotionally. You're young, you're unformed, you're churning, you're surrounded by Latin poets who write about homoerotic love. It's pretty amazing if something doesn't kindle. And the point I think I want to make, decided for that reason to include these things in the book, is that it isn't a form of sex as well, or only, it's a form of love, and needs to be understood in that way. So at a time when there's a lot of attempt to criminalize or defame homosexual behavior, I thought I might speak up that far about it.
Do you have any reluctance to do it in any way, for any reason?
No. I don't put in any names.
Right.
I don't feel I have copyright in anyone but myself.
Which leads me to a larger question. What's not in here? What is it that is part of who you are that's not here?
I specifically say at the beginning, I have a special little note, a warning.
Yes.
Saying if that's what you're interested in, you'll be disappointed, because
no, you do say
I only have copyright in myself first. It's not, I can't really commit other people's stories to enhance my own, unless they're already public figures in some way. And the book is supposed to be about a journey of ideas and experiences and battles over ideology and principles. It's not a racy memoir of myself.
It's not a tell-all about my life.
No.
On the other
maybe
hand...
Maybe now will be the time to beguile the weary hours by doing that.
Well, why not?
Yes.
Yes, please do now.
Bring some comfort to those, those chemotherapeutic evenings.
Some of the more interesting observations...
I can't tell you how little like sex I feel like talking about.
Well, I understand that.
I've never felt so unmanned in my entire life.
Back to living with cancer.
Yes.
What's the worst part of it? Is it puts some sense of mortality in your focus?